Hi, Josh. Josh, can you hear me?
We are live and broadcasting right now.
Perfect. Perfect. Hello, everyone. I am Marisol Norris, and on behalf of the Voices of World Forum of Music Therapy editorial team, the co-guest editors of the special issue of Black Aesthetics and the Art Therapies, Britton Williams and Leah Gipson, I am so very thankful that all of you are joining us today and welcome you to this conversation. The special issue on Black Aesthetics and Art Therapies is the first across the art therapies professions to center Black art therapy communities. Our stories, our creativity, our physical, emotive, and intellectual labor that has and continues to define, explore, critique, transgress, and transcend traditional boundaries established within our professions. It's a community of Black art therapy practitioners, students, educators, researchers, visual artists, dancers, dramatists, art activists, community organizers, cultural workers, and community healers that have come together to make this special issue special. And so today we want to take some time in the fullness of our political climate, in the fullness of the many things that we hold entering into this space, to really honor the collective fruits of our labor and to reflect on the significance of this work. So for today, I ask you that you join us, engage fully in our dialogue box, the chat and dialogue, and spend some time exploring this special issue. We'll begin the session today with special reflections from graduate students who have had the opportunity to read excerpts of the special issue. Danielle Swan, an art therapy student at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Delam Garcia, a drama therapy student at New York University Steinhardt Drama Therapy Program, Fakoya Jack-Vilmer, a music therapist at Good Vibes Music Therapy Services and music therapy student at Malloy University in New York. We'll also be joined by Mynisha White, dance movement therapist based in Philadelphia, and also the co-founder of Black Magic, the Black DMT organization's dance movement therapy. And we're also very fortunate to have Dr. Stephanie Y. Evans, professor of Black Women's Studies and who also serves as the director of the Institute of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Georgia State University, joining us today. Her work has centered Black women's intellectual histories, memoirs, and mental health. She's had several books, several writings, but we want to highlight a few that you may also come in contact with: Black Women in the Ivory Tower, 1850 to 1954, an intellectual history; Black women's mental health, that I actually have right here in front of me on my desk and I refer to often, as well as Black women's yoga histories, memoirs of inner peace, which is a recent publication. She is the founder of the Black Women's Music Therapy Network, which is a collective of women that are interested and very dedicated to the work of music therapy and music and healing throughout the communities, and also the co-founder of Black Women's Music Database. We are so excited to have Dr. Evans with us and to have all of the participants joining us today. And so we're going to delve into the conversation of Black aesthetics and the arts therapies now, starting with some of our students. So let's start with Danielle Swan. Danielle.
Hello. I just want to speak to a few of the articles that I've read that helped me in my advocacy and practice. I feel speaking here today is a part of my art therapy practice and questioning and research. The authors of the collections of writings make it very obvious to the layperson that creative arts therapies operate as an essential tool for Black, Indigenous people of color that can heal. These tools can help heal. They can build community. They invite discussion and spark change. A lot of authors offer that the necessity of cultural relevance in art therapy is at stake if BIPOC voices within the field continue to be suppressed. In her research, in particular, one of the articles, Dolls for Peace Memorial, Liberatory Community Art Action and Practice, Rochelle Royster introduces a sustained and culturally relevant creative arts therapy practice. In her research, she creates a project that's able to build upon pre-existing resources, capacities, and talents of the community, transcending educational spaces to responsive to respond to communities and transforming artistic practice from a catharsis practice to a revolutionary call to action and change. Dr. Royster advocates for collective restorative care in her piece and invites participants to find resilience and community in times of trauma and pain. Another article mentions that, or it emphasizes that marginalized communities and marginalized groups establish themselves and find strength within larger exclusionary systems. I arrived at this reflection based on the writing Experiential Out of Abstraction, Merging Experience, Theory, and Praxis as Black Art Therapist by Leah Amaral and Joanna Tesfaye. Constructive praxis generates themselves when we make space for ourselves. That's what I took from this article. The article presents a collection of dialogue and testimony that makes space for the intimate thoughts of Black femme art therapists and creators. Further in some of the articles, specifically, what are you all going to do to keep Black women in art therapy? A Womanist Manifesto for Creative Art Therapies Education. I'm reminded of all, in my reading, I was reminded of all the anxieties that I personally feel and that lie underneath the surface when I practice as the only Black female identifying art therapist when there is an institution or in the classroom. Such a manifesto combined with personal narratives of others offers radical suggestions for change that should have been broadcasted and published for all in the creative arts therapies to read about and understand. I'm thankful that it's being presented here through Voices in the Black Aesthetics issue. The voices of these authors remind me that I have a community in this struggle, but also in the triumph as an art therapist, a Black art therapist, and that my questions of how to make change are not only mine, but ours. And we're continuously working towards finding the answer and creating this praxis ourselves, this new praxis for BIPOC creative art therapists to change narratives and prolong narratives, not only for ourselves in our field, but for those who we practice with and participate in creative arts therapies with. I think creative problem solving and culturally informed methods of care and critical observation followed by action is a BIPOC experience that is also a form of, that's rooted in advocacy for ourselves and our communities. And then also, I've made my own response art to some of the articles. Esperanza Spalding's piece, a creative writing piece, challenged me to not only delve into my own intersectional identities, but give them images and remember instances of my past that have shaped where how I believe in creative arts therapies and how they can heal and also, again, build community. Yes, I very much enjoyed all of them. And again, I thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this. This is my own self-care and advocacy for the community. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Idalmis Garcia. You can call me Ida. I am an NYU drama therapy student. I'm in my last semester of the program. And I'm Afro-Cuban. So that was the first question I asked myself when I was reading the articles and the issue of how do I center myself as a Black woman, not coming with the story of race and racism in America. And I went back to the roots of everything. And when I was reading tracks on repeat by Britton Williams, I was sitting with the pain that I also was feeling when the COVID-19 pandemic started. And as I was reading and reflecting on my own experience and the use of poetry in this article, I found a common thread. I found myself in the same space as the author, talking about holding the trauma of Black bodies, holding trauma and wounds for centuries. And I, myself, as an immigrant to this country, as a Black woman, I noticed that I was also holding all wounds that I had not had time to process, actually, and everything hit it in the same point. And in this article, I am also sitting with this way of ethnography and the way I examine myself. And as I examine myself, I examine my history. I examine the history of my ancestors. And this, what I love about this issue is that the center of the voices that need to be heard. I think this is revolutionary. I think we should bring all these creative responses, as in the creative art therapy field, to bring about another way of academic research, poetry, video. I'm inspired by this issue of the way, because academic research sometimes, maybe for the broader audience, could be hard to even sit in. We're sitting across Zoom screens all day, and we're here doing the work across the screens. But if we are bringing this work through creativity, I feel that I want to know more, and I feel that I am building even more empathy through the stories that we want to center. So that's what I love about this issue. The ways that we receive this content was, for me, revolutionary. It's another way of like bringing about important, hard, painful issues in a new way of saying, in a new way of talking. For me, poetry, it's a way of the style, my own experience and feelings, and talking about metaphor and the body. And we're talking about how the body holds the pain and the trauma. We're talking about the Black experiences. We're talking about how we are agents of change and healing, and just holding space for these issues to come not only in our practice, but in our communities. So that is my piece. I am grateful to be here, and check it out. It's amazing.
Hello, everyone. I am going to reflect on the editorial and Jasmine's piece. It's called Living in Turbulence. Basically, it was a reflection about a collaborative experience with other creative arts therapists. They worked together to create a play. So for me, I think, just like Ida mentioned, just having this whole issue like centered around, Black authorship was just so meaningful to me. Especially, I feel like as a master's student, you're looking into thesis, and you want to find something that resonates with you. But when you look for like Black creative arts therapist research, or just, you know, Black experience, research or reflections, like it's just really hard to find compared to all the other things that are out there. So I'm just so grateful for this issue in general. But I chose this piece because Jasmine talked about the benefit of affinity groups and just how important that is in the Black experience as a creative arts therapist. And for someone like me, I was used to being like the only one in a lot of circles. So to have a space like the Black Music Therapist Network where you can really be held is just amazing, and it's inspired me to like even start an affinity group at my college, because it's just like it's just a different experience. So it's really nice to have this issue for people to see, like, they're not alone, they're not on an island. Because I feel like a lot of people of color, they'll look like at music therapy and then they'll be like, oh, well, I don't really see myself in this, because of just, we are not the majority. So I just wanted to talk about that. But there were so many things in this Living in Turbulence article. I think Jasmine talked about a specific music therapy technique called vocal holding, and I wanted to mention she did a song about holding, but it also made me really think about how Black music, I was thinking about, like Parliament or, spirituals, they just do such a natural um, way of holding, because holding is pretty much when you have like two repetitive chords, repeat it, but it gives you space to like be and like express your full self. And I just thought that was a really cool thing that was implemented into the piece. I also just thought that placemaking was another thing that was mentioned, and it's really important to see yourself. And just, I feel like even for young people that are not sure what they're gonna do, like this issue can bring so much more resources, like, oh, I can be in this field because I see myself here. And it's amazing. I wanted to read all of them, but time. So there was one other thing I wanted to mention, which Jasmine talked about collective breathing. And I think that breathing is so important, especially with everything that's goes on with social justice and injustice for Black people. A lot of times we have so much going on, where literally have people on our necks. So, to just take a moment of collective breathing is just so significant. So that's pretty much my piece. And I appreciate the collaboration in this article as well. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Myanisha. I am a dance movement therapist based out of Philly. And I just want to say that I'm so happy to be here today, be in this space, sharing thoughts and sharing ideas with my fellow Black creative arts therapist. And I'm honored to be invited by Marisol and for the work that you, Britton and Leah, have been doing with the Black aesthetics issue. So when I was asked to share some thoughts for the discussion today, I really focused on reflecting on the last couple of years where I have been actively working to shift my personal and professional focus in a way that decenters and dismantles whiteness within myself, within my work as a counselor and a dance movement therapist, and in the spaces that I occupy. So, of course, like my colleagues have shared today, when we are in these spaces and remember these spaces that we've been in, the thoughts, the memories of pain, of being uncomfortable, of being angry, and of being hurt, those come up. But what I also remembered is what has sustained me on this journey of decentering and dismantling whiteness, and that has kept me energized, and that is being in community with Black folks. Being in community with other Black people has been vital in my commitment to this work for the long haul. Being in community with my Black colleagues, my Black friends, my Black family members, my Black Christian believers, it heals me because they validate me, they understand me, they strengthen my faith and instill my hope in myself and in the world and in this work. And I do that for them. We do it for each other. And as I continue to do this work, as I continue to see my colleagues, my friends, my community do this work, I want to retreat into those spaces more and more. I want us to retreat into those spaces more and more because it's where we have safety and where we have healing. When I'm dancing and moving in my Black body, when I'm moving my Black movements to my Black rhythms and to Black music, I feel grounded. I feel whole. I feel like myself. When I do that in community with other Black dancers, Black movers, Black bodies, I feel connected and I feel joy. And we need that in this work. We need to have that to sustain us to do this work. We need to feel appreciated in these Black spaces outside of the white gaze and the patriarchal gaze, outside of the way that these gazes make our movements and our bodies and our work performative. Specifically thinking about music in the way that it sexualizes our music. We need to have those spaces where we feel validated, understood, and appreciated for who we are. And I'm really excited about this Black aesthetics issue because it's doing just that. It's talking about Black health, Black healing, Black work, Black everything, Black music, Black arts. It's talking about those things, and we need to have these spaces more often. We need these spaces to be intentional. We need these spaces to be first, not created as an afterthought, not created as a concession, not created with leftover resources, but we need these intentional spaces so that we can retreat to them to be refueled and re-energized to continue to do this work, continue to fight, because it's what heals us. And I'm excited to see what this issue of the Black aesthetics, the issue of the voices, what this does to propel us forward, to propel our work forward, to push the creative arts therapies and the work that Black people in the creative arts therapies are doing to push forward. And I'm just excited. Thank you.
Wow. I feel so full right now. I feel like we had a full course meal, and it's just being able to hear just the experiences, the engagement to this work. I'm so excited. I'm going to invite Dr. Stephanie Evans, Britton Williams, and Leah Gipson to join on screen. Awesome. And we're going to actually delve right into this dialogue. Manisha, Danielle, Pakoya, Iranis, I thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and your reflection. It grounds us, it grounds our work. And I just so honored the collective wisdom in here, even the breath. And I think we need to take that breath, collective breath together, and to really honor the space that has been created and constructed here, even in this moment right now. Come on, breathe. I think we need to breathe together. I'm going to transition it over to you, Dr. Evans, to lead us off.
Thank you, Marisol, Britton, and Leah for doing this work. Thank you to the reading panel, the reading circle. This is such a powerful space and so necessary, because what struck me reading the editorial and just listening to the speakers is who heals the healers? Who heals the healers? This is Black healing work. And, as we can see, this interdisciplinary discussion of race, gender, art, and healing really reflects the historical reality that most of the community healers and the family healers are Black women. And so I really appreciate the work that we do in this issue, focusing on care, authorship, and ownership, that has at the forefront created a space of care for yourselves, right? And for ourselves in this work. So I basically have 3 questions. And again, thank you so much for this invitation to be part of a collective. My work in Black women's wellness is to purposefully, mindfully create these spaces. And so I'm really honored to be entered into this space. So I basically have 3 questions for the editors to help us unpack this process. grounded, as most of my work is, in Anna Julia Cooper's understanding of regeneration, right? You know how we get in these academic spaces, we like to say, we're gonna have a generative discussion, right? You know, I love that word. We gonna generate some stuff. Well, Anna Julia Cooper's concept of regeneration helps us reclaim the history. So the three questions that I have are basically a question of retrospection, introspection, and prospection, looking at the past, where we are now, and the future in this work. So if you could all just take a couple of minutes to introduce us to the origins of your interest in art therapy, and shout out and identify any of the foundational Black scholars that impacted you. And we can go Marisol, Britton, and Leah in that order, and just do the round robin.
Okay. Thank you for these questions. I think that in writing and connecting to this work, one of those things that we've had to contend with is that in many ways, our profession would have us be ahistorical and to be isolative. And that serves as a particular apparatus of really disengaging us with our collective work and our collective healing, and disengaging us from, or disconnecting us from one another. Some of the names that I've come to learn over the years are names that I never really heard of in classrooms, or names that I didn't really come to know until well into my professional life. And now that I've known those names, like they have become fuel, and they have become peace, and they have become, yes, generativity, but also they've become solace. And so I think about Zane Ragland's work that I recently came in contact with, being one of the few therapists to actually use the word community music therapy and talk about Black clients and Black communities in 1974. Work that I had never heard of until probably maybe, I feel like maybe 4 months ago or so, and not having connected to that work before. It kind of always reminds me that there's always more and more there. We're not the first, we're not by any means the first to engage with this work, and we recognize that. But there is a work of uncovering and honoring the histories that Zane Ragland has done, Fran Goldberg, DeForia Lane, Richard Graham and his work within professional organizing of our professional organizations, and that are so important. And so I think that those are some centers that I go back to for rejuvenation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I feel so full of love and many other things just from everything I've heard from everyone. And I think it speaks to what happens, as Manisha said, when Black people come together and there's a sense of community. And I'm just feeling so much resonance with what every single person has said. And that to me is part of my sustaining work, being in spaces such as this. So I just wanted to name that. I love this question, and I appreciate this question because it calls a response of thinking about who am I in conversation with in my work, who is driving me. So I'm going to take a disrupted look at how I might sometimes answer that question. And I'm going to start with my mother, was the first scholar that I learned from. She's the person who taught me how to live in a world that would be hostile, even when I was too young to believe from her that the world was in fact hostile. We laugh about it now in moments where, I used to push against the things that she was trying to warn me from, because what I didn't realize was her protecting hands, of course, shielded me from a lot of the things that she was giving me warning from. But what she knew that I couldn't, of course, know was that at some point I would leave the embrace of her close grip and find myself in a world that does not always welcome me. And I certainly have found that. So my mom is certainly the first person that taught me how to think critically, that taught me how to understand what exists underneath the surface of what is said, that helps me to understand how people will tell me that the world is one thing, but really I will feel that it is something else. So I give great gratitude to my most favorite person in the world, who is my mother. I also have been thinking, so I have to say that, of course, right, as soon as I start to name just a few, which is what I will do, I will just name a few. There's so many people that I will not name, and I am on a swell of so many people that have ushered me to where I am. And there's an immensity of gratitude and love that I have for all of them. But I'm just sitting with some deep love right now for Nina Simone, who I've been listening to her music a lot. And, you know, when you listen to Nina Simone, she teaches as much as she preaches and sings and touches my soul. And I watch her in both, you know, in her live performances, I watch her be in audiences where she sees herself reflected, and I watch her be in audiences where she doesn't. And I watch her take up a fullness in how she speaks and sings pain, and somehow makes me feel good while she's doing it. And I think about that complicated experience that Black folks often find ourselves in. How do I sustain myself in this pain and in this weight? I mean, we are in a time right now where there's so much pain and grief. We can't even get through one trial before we're already mourning someone else, before we're already then trying to figure out something else. There's so much to hold. And so then I go to Nina. And this is where I learn that piece of how do I do what I do? Like, how did Nina Simone, with all that she was holding, get up to that piano and sing her spirit like that, right? And so I learned from Nina. And then just one more person that I will call up in this moment is Toni Morrison, who I love and who took us to school in so many different ways. Like when she just so casually, but with so much presence and confidence, tells someone that you ask me a question that you wouldn't ask a white person and you don't even know how racist it is. And she says it in a way that makes me look at Toni and go, I want to feel that root that exists in you that allows you to sit here in this interview and not bow to something that you know does not belong to you or that you know you do not wish for. And my education would have me to believe that the very thing that Toni Morrison was rebuking is the very thing that I should strive for. And so I will give honor and gratitude to Toni Morrison in response to that question. Those are just a few of the people who bring me to this moment. Thank you.
So much, right? And this is, you know, just us, you know, we're having these conversations, I think, just in doing this special issue, you know, talking with each other, answering this question about origins, I think. And I'm grateful to be having this conversation here, because I do think that this is so important to being able to put this special issue out. And I'm going to just echo Britton about my mama, you know, and just say that, you know, my mama helped me to get here, to be able to say, I have what I need. You know, you have what you need. And that's really something that I really want to say to all the Black students who are watching this. You know, you have what you need. You might find yourself in a space where somebody's looking at you like, you know, who are you? And that's okay, because you have what you need and you are where you need to be. And so I think that, you know, in thinking of my mother, I'm of course thinking about all of the women who have struggled to give us just that, what we need, right? And so I think I will just speak to a few influences, but also say, you know, this is of course for me about Black feminist leadership, womanist leadership, and my journey kind of back to art therapy in a way, sort of being in art therapy and being, you know, taught in a particular way that of course centers whiteness and centers white ways of being and knowing, and really being disturbed by the kinds of things I was expected to embody, right? Because this work requires you to be in a position where you're engaging with others, right, in relationship, and how you think about those relationships, being shaped in a particular way, the culture and the politics that shape what you think within those relationships is so crucial, right? And so in my Black woman self, right, I'm something's not right, I know something's not right. And so what's been important to me is to go to the archives and realizing that I needed to unlearn things that I learned, right, as I was studying to be a practitioner. I needed to go back to being in my mother's library. My mother was an elementary school educator, a librarian, being in spaces that she cultivated in a Southern Black church, in a small town. And all of the women around her, praying with her, my grandmothers, those spaces were informative in my returning to the archive. So even when I get to the point where I say, I know that there are Black people who've been doing this work and doing this work even in the profession, right? So how do I bridge this false line that those who are in the profession are the ones who sort of have the ideas that I need to be working with, and those who are not in the profession, right, need some other kind of training in order to be in dialogue, right? So that's part of the disruption here as well. But I think it's those origins, being able to, go to Black feminists, go to womanist theologians for me have been really important. Dolores Williams, Jacqueline Grant. Also, I'll lift up Alice Walker. And so this just garden of resources and intellectual just creativity has really informed how I've then gone back and interpreted the art therapy archive, if you will. So when I go back and I see, okay, here are the Black art therapists that have been written about, but they've been written about in these tokenizing ways, right? I'm going to now interpret their work, right? And so it's been important for me to think about Black art therapists in the 1970s who called themselves the Third World Committee, right? Lucille Venture, Cliff Joseph, Georgette Seabrook Powell, Lemuel Joyner, Sarah McGee's work, Charles Anderson, Anna Hiscox, who's in the issue, who wrote the first book, edited the first book on cultural issues in art therapy called Tapestry of Cultural Issues. And then of course, then there's the generation of art therapists who, right, were taught by the Third World Committee, right? So Cheryl Dobie Copeland, Phoebe Ferris Dufresne, Charlotte Boston, Stella Stephanie, Gwendolyn Short. And so these are folks whose work really needed to be contextualized. I needed to look at their work inside something much larger, right? Inside of Black struggle for freedom, not just inside of art therapy, the profession, right, in a way that was being whitewashed. And so I'll stop there because I want to definitely give us a chance to talk about where we went from there, right, and the richness of that. But I really, there's so many shoulders that I stand on, and I'm just grateful to be able to offer my journey into this space for students that, when I was in school, I wasn't able to have this resource.
Outstanding. Yes, thank you so much. I will refrain from getting out of my chair and running around in church circles, but that's where I'm at right now. This is such beautiful collaborative work, right? So within Art Therapies, plural, this is an interdisciplinary collaboration within Art Therapies that you bring this particular expertise to. So let's get to that. Flipping over tables in the art world, which is what I'll call it. Right? How do you, flipping over tables in art therapy and what it means. So the issue is Black aesthetics, upsetting, undoing, uncanonizing the arts therapies. And so can you give us a sense of, and this is so important because I feel like what I'm doing, is very much in line with Combahee Collective, the Billy Avery's public health, Black women's public health movement, Crunk Feminist Collective, but I'm very particular that I'm interested in creating a library of scholarship that will train this next generation. So before we get to that next generation question, can you give us a sense of what this particular issue does, the origin of it, the process of it, right? Because we're talking about theory, practice, but restructuring and unsettling the actual professions, right? And I think the power of the interdisciplinary approach to that is that this is not just happening in art therapy, in dance therapy, in music therapy. So there's something really unique about this particular issue. So if you can just do a round robin and let us know, how did we get here? How did we get here? And what does this mean for the professions?
Yeah, so I want to start very concretely as far as thinking about introductions and invitations and like how we came together. Initially, when I was invited to open up a special issue on Black aesthetics and music therapy, I immediately said no, because I felt that there's a way that sometimes, even in well-intentioned spaces, well-meaning spaces, that our work becomes our work and our voices become tokenized. Our work becomes co-opted. Our work gets watered down, whitewashed, and so this issue was probably sitting and waiting for a while until Leah and Britton and I got together and we started thinking about what do we have to say for this very moment, and what were we hearing? Like when we put our ears to the ground, what did we hear our communities talking about? And would this be the time that we would have platforms that would share this type of collective work? And so, like, in a very concrete way, that's how maybe this special issue came together. But the realities of it is that there's something that happens in the silos of our professions. There are so many ways in which we understand as Black people engaging in creative work and creative expression that we are not separate, and we can't be siloed. We can't, even though there's specializations and there's different levels of expertise, that in very many ways, the work and the creative processes are teaching us that we need to be together, right? Right, and so in the doing of the work reveals back to us that we can't really live in the silos that we have been placed in and established by our professions. And so then, like, the returning, that journeying that Leah talks about, and even that journeying that Britton also reflects upon, is also like a journey back to ourselves and back to our histories, our legacies. And there is invariably a need to contend and a need to transgress. And that flipping over of tables is also very much part of the doing of Black aesthetics in our profession, right? So there's like this conceptual approach and philosophies around what Black aesthetics is. I mean, there's the doing of it, the living of it, the breathing of it, and just the being in our spaces. And that type of work demands a recognition and an honoring of our histories, and reminding us like that we are enough, as Leah's mentioned. And so I think very much in this present work, it is a work of contending, and it is disturbing. And when you read, many people pick up this special issue to read the elements in it and to read and understand it, well, you may realize that it's not made for everybody, right? It's for those that are going to read the works in this special issue and find truth and find healing, and also break free from some of the ways in which our systems in the arts therapies have held us captive and have held us prisoner. And so in many ways, there's a radical kind of healing work that was poured into creating this special issue. And there's a radical healing work that's there waiting for many that want to grab hold and resource while they're moving through their path and finding and journeying back to themselves and back to us as a community.
I love, Marisol, that you went concrete and gave us the history and the evolution, because it allows me to go a little bit more abstract, which those who know me know I love to do. I want to say that this was born out of relationship. Even in Marisol offering us the history, I mean, she was asked to do an issue and she reached out to build a community to do this. And, you know, Leah, Marisol, and I have worked in different contexts and capacities together, and relationship has built in that. What I really appreciate is what it is to be able to sit across from people and like say something with my face and know that they know what I'm saying, and that whole conversation can live and breathe, and I can trust that we both know what we're talking about. And the three of us can walk into a space that is full of all sorts of other folks, and that we can have a full-on dialogue across the room, not even sitting right next to each other. I love those moments because I don't often get those moments. And so I start there with the relationship because that's so important to how this whole process has gone. And there was a holding in our relationship of each other, of the work that we want to do, of how we want to show up to this work together collectively. And that then spanned out to how we wanted to embrace other people into this collective dialogue. You know, when we talk about, you know, even this, what we're doing here is a conversation, is a dialogue. When we talk about what is happening in this work, it's not, you know, Ida talked about, you know, can we reimagine what we consider academic, that we are having a conversation in the way that is situated in the Black bones that live within us. And so there is such love that exists in and across. There's understanding that exists in and across. And, you know, Manisha was talking about this idea of decentering, dismantling whiteness. There is an unapologetic writing. Many of the articles explicitly and or implicitly say, I'm writing this as I am, and I know that there are people that are going to get it, even if we've never even met. And that's who I'm writing to. And I'm doing that without apology, because often, certainly I can speak for myself as a Black woman navigating the world of academia, the clinical spaces that I exist in, where I often do have to translate myself so that I am legible in a way that is considered acceptable. This special issue doesn't do that. It doesn't even work to do it. And there's a gift in that certainly I don't often get when I'm writing in other contexts. When I'm in community, in other contexts, I see this special issue as community building and gathering. You know, I see this as, you know, when I read, it's a beautiful thing for me to read one person's article, then read someone else's in this special issue, and you see the reverberation. These two people may not even know each other, right? And it speaks to what I think Leah, Marisol, and I found in our own experiences. We come from different modalities, but we also come from each other. And there's knowing that exists there. And it doesn't mean that we think the same things or are always, you know, but it does mean that there's a deep understanding and care that comes into that space. And so I think even in that way, to create that in a special issue and privilege that, I think is a disruption of supremacy. Of molding. You will read in this, you know, Ida's talking about the poetry. I don't see poetry as not academic, you know, it is the creative teaches me, which is why I chose creatives to respond to your question. I do see the scholarly in that. And so for me, I think this article this special issue in mere nature of existing is saying there are many ways of knowing, and it's a pushback on epistemic violence and erasure. I'll leave it there I mean, there's so much, but that'll be my piece.
So I'm going to pick up here and talk about Black women's invisibilized labor and how pervasive that is. And in terms of the journey, I want to say we worked and worked and worked and worked for this issue. And I want to say that our work is also together with all of the other, Black art therapists who have worked unnoticed in communities where no other art therapist would go, had no idea how to work with those communities, had no idea, how you would even begin, right? For all of the Black art therapists who have started programs and created resources that weren't there, forged partnerships, developed their own theories and models and ways of working that never got published, right? I just want to mention those, right? Because this is who we really, another, space in which we stand on those shoulders. And I want to say, when I talk about being in a mainstream, education as an educator, as an art therapy educator, but also as a product of that educational system, I also want to name the importance of the labor of Black women arts therapy supervisors. So these are the women who are in the field practicing art therapy and have not necessarily been offered teaching positions, right? But are teaching because they're supervising. So, and I will just say that we did a lot of innovative things in this issue. One of those things was to have a cover for our online issue. And we invited Scheherazade Tillett, a photographer and art therapist, to submit work for the cover. And Scheherazade was my supervisor when I was in school. And so when I talk about being in a mainstream space, I cannot tell you how important having a Black woman supervisor, a Black feminist supervisor was to me, right? As a remedy, as a balm, for what, I'm going into these systems and all I keep seeing are Black people, and as a teacher, I'm working with students and I know my students are working with Black people, but I know that there are few Black students in the programs, right? Across the arts therapies. And the Black students who are in these programs are, often having to navigate, what's going on, sometimes without the language or permission to use the language that they have to talk about what's going on. So, and I want to just say, with that, right, again, in this issue, what you'll see hopefully is that community, as what Britton was saying, community of people doing the work. That's what I want to say to that.
Yes, the work, W-E-R-K, the work. So I've had the opportunity to look at just a couple of the pieces, and I was struck by Kai Slaughter's tribute to their great-great-grandmother, Nancy Marker Brown, right? And how that reflects the retrospection. And Adrian Dunn's amazing piece on Black Messiah and the interview and the critique of that, that we are grounded in this action and we are divine in this action right now. And even if you try to convince us that we really shouldn't be doing this work for various and sundry reasons, this is who we are and what we were here to do, and we are acting in this purpose. And Esperanza Spalding's, no end in sight. There is no end in sight. What a rich piece from a rich artist that helps us think about what Black aesthetics is and what care we take to prepare the next generation. And I love that you mentioned I care a lot, because I had just seen the movie and I was like, oh my God, if this isn't the nonprofit higher education care industrial complex, wow. And so I really value what this issue can do to train the next generation of scholar practitioners, of scholar activists, of clinicians. And so the last question has to do with your desired takeaway for the next generation of those supervisors, of those archivists and researchers, of those professors, of those students, of people like me who know that art saved our lives. Because I went to a performing arts middle school, and as a survivor several times over of sexual violence, it was my dance teacher, Pam Copley, very, 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 very short white woman from Oklahoma, who taught me how to dance in a way that, in West Jabip, Tucson, Arizona, how to value my body, so that even though it was being broken in certain ways, I had ways of healing. And that's how, I came through yoga, to yoga through dance and Miss Copley. And so there are people who we know that sometimes I can't see myself sitting on a couch, but when I go to the club and I do the wine, I sweat it out, like that's therapy that works. And so for this next generation of art therapists, of Black art therapists, what is the takeaway message that you want to send? And from reading this, for me, was very affirming. Like, I sometimes feel crazy doing this work. Like, what is wrong with me? I can't stop researching pleasure and the history of pleasure, because I want to feel good. And I want to do so in a way that doesn't minimize the pain and the destruction and the death and the real-time murder, So I really appreciate all that you've done in pulling this together. Tell me about your kind of takeaway message, and let us know anything that surprised you in this work that you might want to pull forward as a gift, as a contribution, as a guide, as a toast to the next generation of workers.
Do you mind if we not do the round robin this time? See if something percolates in the room. I'm sitting with some things right now.
Yes, ma'am. This is your world. I'm just a squirrel. Go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that was surprising was how quickly a through line emerged in all of the submissions. So that when we wrote our editorial, it wasn't hard for us to find those themes, thinking about care and authorship and ownership. We just went through the issue. We just talked out quickly, who's doing this, who's doing this, who's doing this. And those, kind of categories really came to us. And so that was telling, it was speaking to this moment, right? I think that it was really speaking to, this moment and every moment of Black people's continued creativity for survival and for emancipation that just kept coming through. So I don't necessarily know why I was surprised, but it's what's beautiful, I think, about this being, a journal issue is that you can, there's a moment where things can crystallize for you. There's a moment where you can see things, right in front of you put together. And so I'm excited for these pieces to start circulating, because I know that what will happen, there'll be all these, resonances with other things happening, right? So yeah, I just think that there's already, conversation across the disciplines now, right? That's begun. And I can't wait to see what happens from here. I can't wait to see the way that the field really grows from this issue. And also, I'm quite excited to see and hopeful that faculty who are teaching in the arts therapies will really struggle through the complexities that are presented in this issue, because it's not, the issue doesn't present itself in a familiar way probably to most art therapy classrooms. And we speak to that, we sort of name that, and as a, hey, just so you know, you may or may not recognize where you are if you enter here. That's okay. So yeah, I'm excited for that, for the conversation, the dialogue, the interdisciplinary dialogue and the transdisciplinary dialogue, right? That we don't have to only be in conversation with creative arts therapists, but that we can really look to the rich traditions of Black aesthetics, inquiry, to continue to build out the voices here.
I agree with everything you just said, Leah. And I would just add to this, I think my hope and my desire for the future with this is, I know what it is for me when I see myself reflected in something that gives me a different sense of where I can go. And so I think about students who will be able to read this, even just hearing from the students. Danielle was talking about what it is to know, the impact of underrepresentation in predominantly white spaces. Fukoya was talking about the inherent holding of Black music. And I think there is holding that happens in the act of speaking Black truths that people will be able to see themselves read, see themselves expressed, see themselves reflected in this special issue. And so my hope is that will become part of a larger conversation that continues. When I would see people writing in the field, presenting in the field that look like me, it gives me not just the knowing or the belief that like I can do this too, but it also, it lights a path in a way that makes me want to travel that road, because I know I will be able to travel with others. And so I'm looking forward to the continued building of community that I hope will come as people begin to engage with this work. And people are doing this work in other ways, in the way in which they are, the way in which people who have graduated and are working in the field that are Black are showing up to their work. What does it mean for them to see themselves reflected in this work? And then how can we be in conversation across? It doesn't have to live in a journal to be real and true. And so I'm just looking for the reverberations and for that to happen and how that will inevitably, for me, I hope, transform the way we can imagine care. And I use that word not as it is, but as I hope it will one day be for the folks that we work with. And so not just how it lives as something for Black creative arts therapies, creative arts therapists and people who are in allied fields, but also for our clients that we work with that are Black, that perhaps don't see themselves reflected in the care that they're getting. I believe that all of my clients that I will work with, all of the folks that show up, if I show up somewhere, I want to believe that there is something that speaks to my needs in the fullness of who I am. And so I want to work towards a way of working that can realize that. And I hope that this is part of the opening of space where for me, in many ways, it has felt like there is no space. That's my hope for the future.
And what I'm sitting with right now, unformed, but like deeply sensed, is a line from Esperanza Spalding's work, where she talks about no end in sight. But there's a line that talks about vigorously rubbing and doing whatever needs to be done in this kind of very intimate nature to create something on the inside of us that would transform the world. And so this idea of no end in sight, there's a multiplicity to it, like no end in sight, the pain that we experience, but then also the possibility beyond this space, like in a very Afrofuturistic and very, transformational kind of visioning beyond where we are. And I'm hoping that when people pick up this work, that there is a vigorous rubbing and intimacy that takes place in reading this work. And I'm emotional because it's necessary. It's necessary work for our healing. It's necessary work that we come close and intimate with our own being, the things that we've been taught and told that are not necessary, that are deviant, that are, problematic and troublesome to this profession, that we come so close to that work and realize that's the treasure. That's the thing that people want. The same things that they say that are problematic for us are the things that they search and seek for. The things that we inherently know how to do, because within our cultural learning, our social learning, it informs us and it teaches us how to move through these spaces. I hope that we return to that and do that type of work, that internal work that bridges us back home, returns us back home, returns us to our communities, returns us in these very broad and expansive ways so that we can actually reshape the future. Not just for ourselves and not by ourselves, but collectively together.
Yes, thank you. I see you, I feel you, I think you, I am you. So often we are taught to not be emotional because the emotion is different than the intellect, right? And we, in doing so, are conditioned to pretend to ignore not only our own feelings, but to ignore how violent academia is, right? So there's the work of doing the practice, and then there's the work of shaping the academic training of the practice, and that is violent as much as the practice itself. And so there's our personal, and I bring my whole self to this. I bring my emotional self to my work. I bring my, which is dissuaded. I bring my, as well as my, intellectual, the cognitive, the experiential, all these different types. But I think this is so important that I focus on writing, because it's my purpose. Like, I write because it's my purpose, it's my pleasure, it's my power, it's what I'm here to do. And in doing so in academia is doing so in a violent space. And so to be a part of a collective that's committed to opening that space, as you say, right, to creating this collective community, and to realize, as Leah said, that you have worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked to get this one little, publishing, academic publishing. And yes, we can absolutely self-publish, we can absolutely, but I applaud you because I refuse to give up academia. I refuse to give up that ground. I'm not an outsider. This is not outsider within. I know these institutions were not built for me, but I also know by my research on Anna Julia Cooper, Mary McLeod Bethune, Septima Clark, Fannie Jackson Coppin, that this is my house. This is my, when you can teach 5 languages at the college level and were born enslaved and can live to be 105 and a half, then you're fit to contend with Anna Julia Cooper. Till then, you can't tell me I don't belong here because you don't know where I'm from and you don't know who made me. And so it's so hard. And I feel like I have such a privilege and an honor to say, yes, I'm full professor. Yes, I know the game. I've beat the game. And to encourage those who are in academic spaces or in the hybrid space between academics and, and community spaces and professional spaces to say, yes, I see you. I feel you. I think you. I am you. We are, yet you are right. When everything else in the academic space, and let's not forget that this is a global journal, an international journal, and so many international healing spaces, international academic spaces are as white as they are in the United States, right? And so for you all to claim space, make space, in this international journal and do so collectively collaborative, because literally that's the only, that's the only way I've gotten through, is working with Black women. That's why I am, not because I'm anything or anybody, I bring my sauce to it, but I am where I am because of Black women, period. On period. So I'll turn it back over to you, Marisol, and just say, I'm so grateful to be a part of this space, a part of your journey, a witness, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
And we are so thankful.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
very thankful. I'm going to pass the mic over to Leah and Britton.
So I just want to, since we're a little bit over time, I just want to lift up the BIPOC Student Fund by Black Art Therapy Educators, which is another one of our collaborations that we are continuing to grow. You can go to the arttherapystudies.com website where you can read more about the BIPOC Student Fund. We are still accepting donations from our fundraising efforts that started this summer. We raised $15,000 and we're able to give 16 students to 16 scholarships, emergency funds to BIPOC students internationally. We are continuing to accept funds so that we can award funds next academic year. So I just wanted to mention that, and also would love to hear from Britton, who's going to tell us about another special issue that will be coming out.
Indeed. Yes, I'm really excited to tell everyone about Breathing Beyond Borders, Racial Justice, and Decolonial Healing Practices. This will be coming out in the Drama Therapy Review. If you are interested, we are looking for Black, Indigenous, people of color who are drama therapists, allied clinicians, and or allied professionals across. We want to be in conversations unapologetically with people who are BIPOC that want to talk about how they understand their work in the context of enduring racial violence and oppression, but also that our stories are full and our histories are rich. And so there is joy, there is pleasure, as you were talking about, Dr. Evans, right? We want to bring the span, our aesthetic and creative practices across BIPOC understandings, histories, ancestries, ecologies, etc. And so we are welcoming stories, articles, creative responses. The full call for papers can be, we're going to have a blurb and a link actually on the site that Leah just gave. So there will be information if people are interested. You can go there so that I'm not giving too many web addresses. I will tell you, if you have questions specifically about the special issue that I'm co-editing with my dear friend and dear colleague, Rafilwe Lapere, you can email us at blm.dramatherapyreview@gmail.com. All of this information will be on the website that Leah gave for the BIPOC Student Fund as well. But we are looking forward to submissions and to continuing this dialogue, continuing this conversation within, across, and around, and etc. And
before leaving, we just want to say thank you to all of our contributors,
yes,
all the writers, all of the artists that poured their whole being into this issue, the reviewers that took the time and care in really critiquing and enhancing all of the work that went into this. This was a group of all Black writers, all Black authors, all Black reviewers. So this was a Black on Black on Black, blackity black, black, black issue. And we are so thankful for that. And so thankful for each one of y'all. And we also want to send a very warm thank you to the Voices editorial team. Your generosity and your care and your labor in this space. And so with that, we are going to call this a day. Thank you all,
everyone who joined this conversation. Yes. That's what a rich and full time we've had together. Thank you, everyone.
Ashe.
Indeed.